like you've spent an awful lot of time on TV over the years.
Yes.
Up until 1977, when you did Hills Have Eyes, right? Is that
yes,
the first?
and after I did The Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was very busy on television during the time I did The Hills Have Eyes, on television as well as doing theater. So, but yeah, I was busy on TV during that time, and certainly after too.
Mm-hmm. Do you prefer TV to movies or?
I think I prefer doing movies, really, but I love, acting is acting. I really prefer, it's really nice, depending on the role, the character that I'm sinking my teeth into. So I don't really have a preference, except, my preference is who's the best character to play. But TV is great exposure, and it's usually much better money for me at this point. So, it'd be hard to pick.
Right. Well, especially if you're doing indie films, because of the fact that they don't pay quite as much as television.
Right. And the thing is that to me, the indie films are easier to do because there's not the network pressure and, it's just more kicked back. It's laid back, Television there's usually a network executive on the set and everything has to be perfect and, you can't waste any time. I mean, it's a business and it's hard. It's hard work.
Well, Susie, now you were in Happy Days, an episode in '74. Now, was that your first?
Was my very first. I had done some indie films in New York and in Dallas. And I moved out here in 1974, and I guest starred on Happy Days the second day I arrived.
Oh,
and that was my very first job in Hollywood.
And you were the sexy prom queen.
I was a prom queen, yes. It wasn't it wasn't a huge part. My friend from high school was working with Gary Marshall as a producer on the show, William S. Bickley. And he had we had been acting partners in theater in high school. And when I got here, I called him and he said, "Come to the set at Paramount. And I want to show you around." And I said, "Oh, God, I'd love to." And I went over to Paramount and met him for lunch. And he took me to the set, and Henry Winkler came up. I got to meet Ron Howard and everybody on the show, including Gary Marshall. And then Henry Winkler came up and said, "Make her my girlfriend." And not only did they do that, Henry Winkler was my first date in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he is the nicest man, and he said, "Welcome to L.A., and he took me to the Imperial Gardens, which was a really hot spot at the time on Sunset Strip, and we just had a ball. He is such a nice human being and made me feel so welcome, and, they got me on the show that week, so that was really cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to let the fans know. Your stage name was Susan Lanier. Am I correct?
Yes.
Back in
yes.
those days. All right. Now, you also were in another TV show that I watched in '76. What was it like to work with John Ritter?
John was great. And when I did the pilot, I had just gotten back from shooting The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, okay.
That same week, they had already started production on the pilot of Three's Company. And they weren't happy with the woman that they had, the girl who they had cast as Chrissy. And I was in the supermarket, and my agent called me and said, "Put down your groceries and get over to ABC this moment." And they had me paged. This was before cell phones.
Right.
And so they paged me And he said, put down the groceries. I said, there's nothing to eat. Put down your groceries and get over to ABC now. I did. They screen tested me that night. I only had about 2 days of rehearsal, and then I had to learn all those lines in 2 days and then shoot the third day. Now, John and Joyce had not had as much TV experience as I had, and the audience already knew me from Welcome Back, Kotter. So
right.
I'm not sure exactly the politics behind all of that, but there were a lot of politics going on in terms of laughs and attention from the audience and other things, other components that I will never know or understand. And so there was some competition between John and I, and that is the truth. And I felt it. So, you know, I was not surprised when they went with somebody else.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Yeah. All right.
So, you know,
now,
it's not, everybody doesn't love each other in Hollywood. Now,
right.
In retrospect, and his wife at the time, Nancy Ritter, and I are dear friends. And I am friends with all of his children, Jason, Tyler, and Carly. And so it's weird how years later I actually hang out with his family from time to time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, you also worked with a legend, too, in Barnaby Jones.
Oh, yeah. Well, which one? Pat Hingle or Buddy Ebsen? You know.
Buddy Ebsen and Pat Hingle, exactly.
Yeah. So Pat Hingle, Barnaby Jones was my second television show. And that was filmed. Happy Days was easy because it was, that was filmed too, but my part wasn't huge. My part was bigger on Barnaby Jones. And Pat Hingle could see that, you know, on action, you have to stop. You know, I had to get out of a car and stop at an exact point where you can't look down to look for your mark.
Right.
So Pat Hingle got very protective of me on the set. And he said, ask for a sandbag. And I said, what's that? Because I had done tons of theater, but not tons of film. And so it's a bag of sand, and when your toes hit it, you know to stop. And you don't have to look down, but I didn't know to look for the sandbag. To ask for a sandbag. So Pat Hingle said, look, come to my dressing room at lunch. We got to talk about some film stuff, and you'll use it for the rest of your life. I was the luckiest girl in Hollywood because we became really good friends, and he was such a fine, skilled, legendary, iconic actor that decided to take me under his wing and kind of teach me some of the tricks that you just don't learn in acting class. Acting classes don't teach you little technical things on the set. You know, not any that I've been to before that, and not any I've been to after that.
Wow. Good to have all that background to work with, to know that I've been really lucky in terms of the people that my path has crossed. You know, I worked with Tennessee Williams himself. You know, I worked with Raymond Massey himself. I was on the road for a year with Donald O'Connor, who taught me all those old tap routines. So I've been very, very lucky with who I've worked with, and I feel very blessed about that.
Well, you also run on a TV series, Phyllis.
Yes.
As Corky. What was the experience like on Phyllis?
Well, Cloris Leachman was, you know, that was her series. And so everybody had said, oh my God, Cloris Leachman, she's so mean, she's tough. And you're, be careful on the set, watch what you say and tiptoe around Cloris. And when I got there, Joan Darling was directing that one, and I actually caught the flu while I was shooting it. And Cloris could not have been sweeter. She come to my dressing room, get her some chicken soup, she was very, very protective and very generous on film, and so sweet to me. And all the rumors just didn't, again, I was lucky. I didn't find her. I found her to be nothing but fabulous. So, I lucked out on that one.
Wow. And then you mentioned Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah, I'm most known for the role of Bambi on Welcome Back, Kotter, John Travolta's girlfriend, being a sweat hog, and the Bambi, the girl from the beach. And I think when I go to conventions and appear at places, there are equally as many people, particularly in a older generation, that are more impressed with the fact that I was Bambi than any of my horror films.
Except for the people that come to our festival, because they're more interested in
right.
horror.
Well, I think at this point, The Hills Have Eyes and Welcome Back, Kotter, and all the shows that we've actually talked about are kind of cult at this point. They're cult fans of all of them, and some of that is overlapping. Some of that overlaps. That it's like an antique. I guess that's what I feel like, an antique.
What is so amazing is your career in TV. I mean, we're talking a lot of big shows. Alice, I love that show. Policewoman, 8 is Enough. And then that led up to one of the biggest horrors. It's The Hills Have Eyes in 1977.
They wanted to see something different, but something different saw them first. The Hills Have Eyes.
Mister, don't take your family back in that area. The silver has been gone for 40 years now. Besides, there's nothing back in there but animals.
We're lost. The old creep told you not to get off the road.
What began as a vacation ended as a nightmare.
Hell to pay now.
What the hell was that?
She thought she knew what the world was all about, but nothing prepared her for this. The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, you going with my baby?
Yeah, that way, Dick.
A mother fighting for her child loses it in the worst possible way.
I hit him with a tire iron and I split his face wide open. That was a bad mistake, but I come back for you later, girlie. Why are you doing this?
The story of an American family who lost everything except the will to survive. Murdered, raped, burned, but not beaten. The Hills Have Eyes. The story of one family's refusal to die.
I'm gonna get those animals.
The Hills Have Eyes. A night of terror. A day of vengeance where no one was spared. No one.
Kill the babe! Kill me!
They fought back. Anything was a weapon. The family dog to the family car.
It's working!
The Hills Have Eyes. The most shocking, terrifying film you will ever see, by Wes Craven, writer and director of The Last House on the Left. The Hills Have Eyes. The lucky ones died first.